Hello and welcome to episode 7 of GFD North podcast. My name is Ryan Woodhouse and today I'll be interviewing Till Freitag. So Till will be giving a presentation on the Saturday the 6th of August this year. So you can head on over to gfdnorth.uk, scroll down and you can grab a link to Till's work. You can also head over to the podcast section where we have our interviews with our previous guests. You can also head over to the sign up section to get notified of when tickets will be available to the public. To give a quick background and intro to Till, Till is a systems design master student at HTW Berlin and is also the co-founder of Randwork Games EG. Randwork are currently making the game ABRISS, Build to Destroy, and on top of creating the game, Till is a concept artist who focuses on vehicle and mechanical design. Till has worked for Karakter on an unannounced AAA project and also for the game studios Bubble House and Marshmellow Jetpack. He's also due to work on the game Splitgate very soon. And so in this episode we'll be going over ABRISS and the challenges making the game, and we'll also be talking about some of the design thinking behind some of the spaceships and vehicles in his portfolio. And so without further ado, can I please welcome Till to the podcast. Till, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Hello.
Well, it's great to have you on. I've been looking forward to talking about your game ABRISS and going through your portfolio today. So I was actually just thinking maybe you could just start out by just telling us a little bit about maybe your background. So I mentioned at the beginning that you're actually a systems design master student at HTW Berlin. So could you just tell, for the people who don't know what that is, could you just give us a brief description of what that is?
So I started with studying game design at the HTW Berlin, and it includes everything that's related to games, and the systems design master degree is just sitting on top of that and lets you focus more freely on your own project. And for me, this project was ABRISS, and I created it with two of my colleagues from university, Friedrich and Johannes. And we founded Randwerk, our company, and this is our first game, and we recently released the early access version of it. Yes.
That's great. And so as well, you can actually go over to Steam at the moment and you can get a little bit more information. And I believe, is there a way for people to go and play this game beforehand and even buy it as well?
You can buy it right now. We've had a demo and we will have one in the future, but you can check it out. I mean, there's always the option to return it in case you don't like it, which is very unlikely.
I was going to say, I think we just play like a little clip here just to show people a quick preview of what that looks like, because it's an incredible looking game. It's very well designed, and to be honest, it's definitely a game that I would love. I mean, I love architecture and I love destroying things as well, so it's got all the things that I like, and it's sci-fi on top of all of that. Yeah, incredible. So the first thing that I noticed when watching this is it must have been quite complicated to get all those pieces colliding properly with the physics, and I don't know how much stress that put on the game engine as well, to have all these particles and pieces and things flying around. Would you be able to maybe talk us a little bit about some of the challenges that you faced while you were making the game?
Sure. The game went through a lot of phases, but we had this destruction system in the beginning, and it's based on top of physics with an X. That's like the default physics system in Unity, which is very good and very efficient. So there's not a lot you can do better, but our system for destruction sits on top of that, and for us it was important to have a proper simulation. So you can see in some games, there's especially voxel games, there's always this one piece at the bottom that holds a huge chunk of stuff on top of it, but we wanted to have proper physics, which is not to say that the voxel games aren't awesome. Teardown is an incredible game, insanely good. It's quite hardware hungry. So you need quite a good PC to run the game properly, and yeah, that's something we've struggled with, but we have taken many steps towards optimization. This is what I've been working on for a long time during the project, like getting the physics system to where it should be, or the destruction system and the building system. But we also have like many tricks in our sleeves, so there's actually a lot less happening than it seems. There are particle systems, there are the shapes of the target blocks are quite optimized, so it seems like there's a lot more happening than actually is. And this was a long process, like many iterations. And
so you guys had to come up with a way to cheat some of the effects that you see on screen to reduce that stress on the game engine. Just to give people another preview, just what you're talking about here. As you can see, look at all these colliding parts. I can imagine this.
This is actually quite old, those videos. Like, but yeah, back then we had like this. This was from 1.5 years ago or 1 year ago. But since then we made a lot of progress, and and there's also like Unity has this VFX graph that's like GPU based and has a node graph and everything, and it's really easy and cool to make complex looking effects with it, and it has all those fancy things. You can have millions of particles, so that's quite cool. And also the shader graph that is quite similar to like what you would have in Blender for materials or something. So that's that's knowledge that you can just take from one software to the other one, and build on top of that.
Very, very important, isn't it, when it feels familiar to a software package that you're used to using? Because it gets very, I guess you need to work quite a quick pace when you're building things with a small team. And very interesting. And so what package do you say you're using to actually create the games? It's built in Unity?
The game is made with Unity, and we're using Unity HDRP, so high definition render pipeline. So this is where we get all the nice volumetric stuff from, and the visual effects graph and lighting overall is a little better. And you can also do like ray tracing stuff, which we haven't included yet, but in theory you could just implement that very easily. Something for the future.
Awesome. And what is going to happen with this game in the future? Are you guys going to continue developing this for the platform? Is looking to maybe build upon this IP, or are you going to branch into new? Are you going to start creating something new?
So we will continue to work on this game for roughly a year. We've already worked for it for like 2 years, and now we'll make a small break because we had a big crunch before early access launch, and then we will continue to work on it. And so we got a ton of feedback for it, and we are likely to create a lot more content, because that's what people said. The game is cool, but we need more levels, we need more content. So we handcrafted every single level, and Friedrich and I spent a lot of time creating every single one of those levels. Friedrich made all the environment stuff and all the lighting and everything. So he's like our main artist in this project, actually. And he spent a lot of time handcrafting all the aesthetics and all the lighting and everything. So so we have like now 35 levels that are very polished and everything, but there's not something like endless content, and so we need to come up with more, and we will also want to come up with a way that makes the game more replayable. And of course we will fix all the bugs first, because there are still a few bugs left before the physics stuff happening, and people running it on different systems, and that's creating some trouble at some point.
That's it. Sadly, games aren't perfect, and with every game when you release it, there's always going to be a few bugs in there. that you need to go back and fix. So that's something that happens with every game, sadly. But a great game. It does look really fun. I'd definitely go and check that one out for sure. Yeah. I believe it read in the bio that you guys started making that game. Was it during COVID or just before COVID hit? So for a couple of years, is that right? Or?
Yeah, like we had a prototype from university with the rough idea, but then COVID struck, and we had a lot of time on our hands. And this is also like the subject of my master degree, and for Friedrich it was the same. And and Johannes had a different subject, but he had also some time during COVID, and we just focused on this game really hard and tried to push it. So we're only 3 people, and there's like a ton of work, and
massive undertaking for a team of 3. So are you guys hiring on as well at the minute, or are you just guys going to keep your team as it is? Are you looking for more staff?
Yeah, so we are currently, for this project, we will stick with the team that we currently have, but we have also noticed that there's a lot of stuff that we're not good at, and maybe we will add new members to the team. But after this project, we will see what will happen next. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. Cool. So if people do want to go and check out that game, that's ABRISS, that's ABRISS game.com, ABRISS game. You can also head over to Steam as well, and you can grab a demo, and if you like it, you can also buy it as well. So that's ABRISS, go check that out. And I think now as well, we're going to go actually take a look at your portfolio, because on top of building a game, I know that you're also an absolute stellar vehicle and mechanical concept artist as well. There is a lot of really interesting work, and I remember when I first came across this, some of your work actually quite a few months ago, quite some time back, and I remember being absolutely blown away by just some of the crazy. It was one of these that I saw, one of these insects, and some of these are very wild. But I was actually just thinking maybe we could start out by talking about the Endeavour. I know this is at least one of my favourite projects that you've done for sure. So I know this starts out all the way from a 2D sketch, so maybe we can just start out by chatting about those very first stages. So I believe that is this here we go. So we've got like everything from like the line work, working all the way up to the 3D model. And so was this a personal project that you started creating this for then?
That was actually my bachelor thesis, and I did this like as a design project. So at the HTV, you can basically do whatever you want related to games. So some people create a prototype or something, or a tool for an engine, or you can also do a concept art project. And I choose to do a concept art project, and this is basically what I came up with. Yeah,
brilliant. And so for your concept art, and I've seen this in a few of your other pieces, so do you start out with just going through a lot of iterations, just line drawing like this?
Yeah, not like this. So I start very rough in 2D most of the times, because I find myself having better ideas in 2D than when I start in 3D. Whenever I start in 3D, it's like all boxes and circles or cylinders, and but so 2D gives me more freedom in the beginning, and I come up with very rough sketches, like focusing on general shapes, like the big shapes and silhouette and stuff. And these ones are just like the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. And I went through a lot of iterations with this one.
Yeah, we can see here some of the descriptions. I don't know if people can see this watching the podcast, but so we've got like little notes here that says like too organic, too fragile. So there's like some self-critique, and you're sharing some of your thought process behind each iteration as you explore each form. I actually quite like this one. I like these very small kind of negative shapes as well that you've got going along the bottom, and it's got quite a different nose to the front of it. Yeah, I actually quite like this one. It's quite interesting. But the final's super cool. And so then you take this from this quite refined 2D stage over into the 3D model. And so as you're building this out, so what were some of the challenges? In fact, I know we've got some of the very early kind of blocking out phase of this. Maybe we can pull up some of those early processes here. So you shared this with me via email, and so could you just explain to people? So is this how you approach all of your projects? Then do you generally try to create a timeline or some kind of a map to help you say, okay, I need to start week 1 creating the kit bash. By week 2, we need this and this and this. So do you always create this kind of a plan for yourself when you approach a project? So it's quite interesting. Yeah.
I mean, for this one, this was my bachelor's thesis, so it was necessary for me to document it that well. But I noticed during like making this, I noticed that there's a lot of value in it for the production. So it's just not just that you can see how you progress from day to day or from week to week, like just seeing what you've done is kind of cool, but also how the design looked in the beginning. So you don't think it looks so shitty, but then you can scroll back to the beginning and you can see that it looked worse before, and you can get a different view on it. Yeah.
I think this process as well. I was having a quick look at this before the call. I think this process of building out your kit bash and the pieces and breaking it down into, okay, I need to create the tail section and this section. I need these pieces. I think it's a very efficient way to work. And as well, just for people, could you explain what Genossenschaft means?
Oh yeah, that's like this is the German word for cooperation, but this is so in parallel to like the bachelor thesis, we have already started with the game. So from time to time we had to do something for the game, because there's a lot of paperwork stuff. So that was also like during this time it was also my personal calendar. And so I've just put everything in there.
Cool. Okay. So yeah, as we can see, I know this may be a little too small for people to see on the screen. So each week we can see how he's broken down the ship into the tail section, and we've got the kit bash kit here, and he's gone through and just blocked out each section of the ship. And I'm assuming that in the very beginning you had like this very rough form that we can see here, right? And then you just go in and detail each section.
Yeah, I made a 3D block out also for the sketches, just to get the perspective right, because the shape is quite hard to just picture in 2D. So I'm always making at least a very rough block out for my 2D stuff as well, just to make sure that perspective is good, or at least like close to what it should be. And then I just picked like first of all like the turret with the radar. I picked that and I detailed it, and sometimes I think it's really cool for me at least to pick a section and polish it to the very end to see what is possible for me, because then I can see what the final result will be on a like very small section, and then I could extrapolate it to the rest of the vehicle.
That's an interesting approach. So by taking, say, this section and get it to like a final level with the shaders, you can say, okay, yeah, this is actually looking good, and you want to go this direction for the rest of the vehicle. So it's almost like a way to test. Okay, yeah, I'll take it to this level before going any further. So yeah, it's an interesting approach.
Also the level that is necessary to make it look good. Because maybe you also don't, if there's time, like I had a ton of time for this one. It was my bachelor thesis. So yeah, but working for a client, it's also maybe a good thing to see to which level it needs to be taken, and maybe not further, and then say, okay, that's it. And
very good. And we've also got some of the final vendors as well of this. I know we've got the ones that sent over, which are absolutely incredible. In fact, before we do that, I'll just so we can see this is the final 3D model, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So we can see all that detail as well they've put into the back. So I've got these. I'm assuming these are like the thrusters at the top here and the bottom, and part of the. I assume some kind of fuel system or part of the engine, perhaps at the back.
Yeah, it's just so it was like inspired by like battleships from the Second World War. Like more specifically, there's the Japanese big battleships, and there's also like oh shit, I forget his name.
Makoto Kobayashi.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
Makoto Kobayashi. So there's like this Space Yamato, and he did some,
Space Yamamoto. Oh, I remember.
and he did some insanely nice designs. I somewhere in the beginning I just saw this design and I couldn't get it out of my head. So this is a very very much inspired by Space Yamato, and the body of the ship in the front it's different, of course, and this is like supposed to be a hydrofoil boat and everything, but the radar is definitely very similar. So this so this is where a lot of the inspiration comes from, but also like the shape of the Yamato itself is like very powerful and very very interesting, and
I can see you've definitely got this scale as well. I've just spotted the very tiny, like you would get on a submarine, the hatch, right? So this absolutely tiny hatch on the top of the ship there, just to give you the idea of the scale of this thing. You can see the ladders there. So this thing is huge. So massive scale, and it really sells it with those details. Yeah. Oh, cool. We've got a turnaround here as well for people watching, so you can see the 3D model there. Yeah, so that Japanese artist you mentioned, that's Makoto Kobayashi. It's funny, when you mentioned his name, I didn't think of anything at first, but now you said the battleship Yamamoto, I'm starting to remember some of that kind of work, and I believe I have seen it before. Yeah. And if we just pull open some of the vendors that you sent me over as well, because I think these are incredible. So we've got the Endeavour, just slide this over to the screen. So we've got this Endeavour, and I really like this scene in particular because you've got this mixture of being in like a ship's dock, and you even got some like character design as well on the left-hand side of these figures just watching over. I'm assuming these are kind of a controller type of robot or something. They're watching over this thing in the dock, and very nice renders. And so, is there any particular story about this? I'm assuming this is probably an alien world, or
yeah. Well, the story itself was like there was this. So this is supposed to be an exploration vessel that's capable of going very fast, but also going through like very rough storms with huge waves and stuff. And there is supposed to be this region that wasn't discovered before because of all those extreme storms and like huge waves and everything. So it wasn't possible to go there. But then they found like this new region. And they noticed some kind of resource there that they wanted to get, and then they built this ship to get there. But yeah, this was like mainly finding an excuse for creating the ship.
That's it. Yeah. Sometimes you get just a really cool idea for a ship, and you have to kind of build the story around it. Sometimes,
yes.
Definitely. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And some beautiful shots of that thing skimming across the ocean. It actually reminds me the Russians built these huge, I believe they're called ekranoplans. Have you heard of them?
Yes.
Or seen them? Yeah.
It
reminds me. Yeah. Those ground effect. Yeah, it reminds me of those old Russian ekranoplan vehicles, and some of them are massive with like multiple turbines. And this shot of this thing skimming across the surface, it just reminded me of some of those old Russian aircraft. I've no clue. I'm assuming I don't think they use them anymore, but that shot's super cool as well. The thing just breaking through a gigantic wave. Yeah, super nice.
Yeah, I had a lot of trouble with this one. Like all this environment stuff and everything. Like I to this point I just focused like really hard on vehicles and stuff, and this was really new to me. And I just noticed that lighting is hard, and the composition is also like something completely different, and getting lighting and composition working, especially with this ship. So I think this vehicle in particular like works really well when you see it in its like the total shape, like everything. It's very balanced, and everything is. Well, I tried to design it as a whole, but then I noticed during those shots that it's like submerged most of the time, like at least like half of the vehicle is covered by water. Like, yeah, this is the shot working. For like working that out for me, how it would look like in water, and being like semi-submerged makes it a totally different vehicle, and so it was quite hard to find a way of including it in the shots and making it look good. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's actually quite an important idea to keep in mind when designing, is to make sure you keep the idea of where the vehicle is going to be and how it's going to be used, because that affects a lot of what the vehicle is going to look like. So in your case, like you say, the vehicle is going to be submerged in water, so making sure that the design is still very strong and functionally believable and all those other things, even when submerged, is something to keep in mind. But yeah, I think it still looks really solid. I think this thing could have just looks just as good just as a ship in and of itself.
Yeah, maybe also a spaceship would have been the easiest way of like showing it as a whole thing, but not having like a medium around it, like water or forest or whatever. Yeah,
very nice. Then you got the final there, which I believe is also an art station of this thing in the hangar. And now we can also see the ambient occlusion pass, and you've also got this rough sketch. So when you were first kind of trying to come up with the idea of the Endeavour, was this one of the initial kind of starting points? And did you come up with this idea from this kind of rough colour sketch, or was this just a colour sketch to figure out the lighting for this final piece?
So at this stage I already had the model, and I tried to come up with a shot of showing it in the wharf or shipyard, or during its construction. And I tried a lot of angles and everything because I wanted to show the vehicle in total. And this is the angle that I came up with, and then I try to experiment with the lighting and try to find the shape of the building where this could take place, and also I try to think about all the cranes and machinery needed for assembly of this thing. And I noticed that like those huge factories in South Korea and China, they just have like those huge boxes, and some of the stuff at the ceiling is like directly inspired, and
pulled from those. It actually reminds me, if people have ever seen, I remember for a project I was referencing a factory interior where they were making the gigantic nuclear submarines. And the nuclear submarine, cut in half. Actually, reminds me of this. It almost reminds me of this picture with this front end cut in half, and you can see, all the inside of the machine being built. But also, I mean, it's not just the machine that was impressive. It was just the scale of some of these places that these gigantic machines get built is impressive in and of itself, I think. Yeah, and there's some great details as well, just to the left of the vehicle. Again, the tiny people. Cranes and the lifting gear just pulling some stuff towards it to check out this ship. So yeah, super cool piece, that one. Awesome. And as well, you also sent me over some pictures via email of this piece. So what is this piece for then? Was this just a second piece just to explore some character design, or?
That's also part of the story. Like I try to come up with some storytelling images, and this is like the people operating the whole thing, and this is like this hologram chamber, and the person, like this tech priest, chained to the machinery, like plugged in the whole thing, and he notices this signal on the map. It's like maybe a little bit cliche, but it was fun for me to explore something with characters, and because I've never really done that before, especially not in 3D.
Yeah, it can be a completely different beast. So were you exploring a little bit of ZBrush, I assume, or was this still in Blender as well?
I'm not using ZBrush. I just use Blender for everything, pretty much. Also, like for sculpting. I think ZBrush would be really useful, but I think it needs some time to to learn it.
It's just that thing with ZBrush. I'm sure everybody comes up against this. It's just the UI. It's quite difficult to get used to. And, you go on the forums and things. The thing everyone complains about with ZBrush is you've got all these very small text boxes which actually control quite important parts of the program. And so you're trying to use this thing, and you're trying to squint your eyes at some like little tiny 6-point character bit of text. And by the way, that controls it's quite important to using the program. So yeah, it takes a little bit of getting used to. But anyway, back to this. So some really cool shots there. You can see there's like a lot of grungy textures. So do you use any like Substance Painter as well for getting some of these really fine detailed textures in, or is this just all done in Blender as well?
I use Substance Painter for most of the materials, but some were also done in Blender, like this holographic stuff and everything. So there's like, you could create them all in Blender. I think I've now found a new workflow, like using Fluent Materializer, I think is the name of the plugin, and that creates pretty much the same results as Substance Painter, for at least in the way I do it. I tend to just auto unwrap everything, export it into Substance Painter, have my smart material, so I tend to spend a lot of time on the material, but not on painting like certain areas. That's generally not what I do, and then I just send it back. But now I can do everything in Blender, and I think it's
awesome.
more.
And that plugin is called Materializer.
Yeah, Fluent Materializer. Yeah.
Fluent Materializer. Okay. Yeah, very interesting. And we've got another shot as well, just showing a wireframe of the ship and all these. I'm assuming this is like some kind of like holographic table or something that she's paired into.
Yeah. So, this person has like these controls with those spheres in the hands. It's supposed to be something like a VR controller of the clunky kind, and controlling the hologram. This is this holographic grid. And, so those shots are meant for storytelling, like seeing like the first signal, and then someone planning it out, the whole ship, and then it gets sent to construction work, and then it goes out of the harbor, out of the shipyard, towards its destination. Yes.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, I don't wonder how long we are from this kind of VR headset. It's quite interesting. I don't know. Maybe this is how all designers will look in the future. I don't know.
Yeah, hopefully not.
I don't know. Maybe quite far, one of these haptic suits or something as well. But anyway, yeah. So very cool piece there. And okay, so I think now we can maybe just talk about maybe some of the salts. In fact, since they're right up here, maybe we can talk about some of these, because these are actually the first pieces that I saw from you a while back, and I think these are absolutely fantastic, and they're so unusual in the shape language and the design, and I think they're really, really interesting. And I think the other thing I liked about them as well is a lot of them would just seem to start out by line work. So was it that same process of just a quick block out in 3D, then refining the design in 2D, right?
I think for this one I started in 2D, but like very rough. I just had this idea of those orbs and like some sort of alien machine harvesting them and sticking it to the back. And I think I did a rough block out in 3D for it, but there was not a lot of 3D involved. I think mainly Photoshop.
Yeah. And would you give yourself any kind of brief, or were you kind of just a bit more open with what this thing could look like? Was there a specific project or thing you have in mind for all these different spaceships? Or
no, not really. This is just pure shapes. Like, this is what I tend to do when I don't have restrictions, or like when I don't have like a task or something. Then I just go for the shapes. And yeah, of course, like this I was thinking of something, of course, like this like space algae flying around, and this thing chops them up and grinds them and puts them in the tanks at its at the back.
Yeah, so some of these designs to me as well, I still feel some of that Japanese influence in the design work, because the Japanese tend to push the design quite hard as well. These very kind of like organic but yet mechanical designs of, like, Evangelion and these kind of series. It kind of starts to remind me of a little bit of those, and lots of detail as well, all in the working on the moving parts.
There's during like also during the Endeavour project, like my bachelor thesis, I also found a lot of Japanese kit bash artists, like real world kit bash, like with plastic parts. They are insane and extremely underrated, I think. Like I mean, they are still popular, but I think it's like so insanely good. I just love this stuff. Also remind me a little bit of like Paul Papera and
Oh yeah, Paul Papera, yeah. It's actually quite an interesting reference, because I don't think many people would think to go look at Japanese kit bash, like real kit bash. I know you're talking about where you take like random parts of plastic toy models of aircraft and tanks and things like that and try to make something new, like real life kit bash. I've seen those things before, but I don't think it's a common reference for people. Most people they go online and start just pulling insects and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's actually quite an interesting and unique inspiration source. But yeah, I think this is really cool as well. You can see that first sketch on paper there.
Yeah, this is like also like this one has a lot of insect references, of course, and but also for this one, it doesn't. It's like an alien-ish spaceship, and it doesn't really make too much sense and stuff. But this is where my designs go when I have no restrictions. But working for a client, of course, you always have like restrictions, and then you have to put it into a game or something, and then there has to be someone has to be able to sit in the cockpit and use it in some way, and it has to pull off some kind of maneuvers, and so the engines have to be at certain places, and maybe it's in space, and it needs thrusters in the front and at the back, and
it's exactly like you say as well. Recently I was working on a VR game, and there's also limitations because it was running on the Android SDK, and we had a certain amount of polys and things that we could do in a single scene without going over the budget. And so there's things like that as well. So if you have like a prop with this amount of details in a scene, like you have to simplify to get everything in there. You either simplify the prop or the scene, or sometimes both, to make that stuff work. But but like I say, there's like a ton of like interesting details here as well. I think that's common throughout all these pieces. Is just the amount of time and effort that's just gone on to detailing those focal points, and you've got these large areas of rest. So these are actually like graphic design principles that I think make pieces of work really strong. And I know it's different for everybody of what makes a design balanced. But for me and for my personal taste, having these areas of where you do have a large span of rest and then points of high frequency detail, I do feel like it gives the eye that good balance between like I say, high visual noise or high visual intensity, and then less. If you had this amount of stuff just everywhere, it would give your eye like nowhere to go. And it's functional as well. I know everybody's different though. Some people prefer designs with just a lot of stuff going on. I know in some Asian artists that I like to look at their digital paintings, there's a lot of stuff going on in some of those. They tend to put a lot of details just on everything. They really tend to go hard on it, whereas and then some prefer to give more rest or empty space. So it's all about finding that balance.
But I think sometimes you can also cramp in a lot of detail as long as it follows some kind of rhythm. It's also okay. But I'm experimenting with this stuff. But I think that like this being very close to insects, insects are I think have maybe a kind of similar distribution of detail and maybe a similar hierarchy. So they maybe have these wings that have some sort of pattern, but are like a big shape, and then their head is very detailed and has very dense detail, and maybe the underside of it has also very dense detail with all the legs attached, and so this is something I also try to replicate in some of these designs.
Yeah, this is it, and this principle of having the top side being very simple, the inside very complicated. It's even reflected in nature. I mean, you think about say like the lobster, the top shell of a lobster. There isn't really much going on there. You've got the separation of the I don't know what the proper term is, like I think called the chitin of the plates. Anyway, so the shell of the lobster, and then on the underneath there's all these very small, smaller legs and small interlocking plates, and there's all these details and stuff. It's actually a very interesting design. I actually recommend people to just Google the underside of a lobster and take a look at some of those shapes. It's super cool. It's always a good reference. But but to go back into that, so I think, like you say, it's not just distribution of detail that makes the design strong. It's also an interesting function. For example, the description here says space elevator repair unit. So I think, regardless of how hard you push the form language, I think coming up with a really interesting function to start with is probably quite important as well. Just starting out with the idea of a space elevator repair unit is a strong enough start to begin with, and then from there you've got that strong start. So okay, well, what does this thing need to do? Well, it needs some way to grasp the cables to go up and down into space. It needs some kind of propulsion system, and so already, even if you didn't have these super crazy organic forms, it would have been a very strong design anyway, I think. And so it's just a case of just exploring, how far can we push this thing? So
that's, maybe that wasn't like that intentional, but I've noticed like having a context and a word and a place, and it tells a story in itself, like not like a literal story, but like just visual storytelling stuff happens, and it makes the design more legit, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Starting out with that interesting story, I think, is the difference between just creating just like a piece that you may have seen before on an ArtStation previously, and then creating a piece that really is different to what's out there. And I think it really does come from the strength of that initial brief. But then again, saying that, I remember seeing this one before we started, and you referenced it, a men's shower gel ball, and just thinking, okay, well, how can we create an interesting design from something that's so, the shape's not particularly interesting.
No.
Unless you're really into shampoo bottles or whatever, but so how can you make something cool from something, everyday and what you would think would be quite boring, and how can you take that and just make a cool design? So, funny exercise, but I think it's still interesting,
That was a task at university, actually. So
and I think as well, I think the next thing we can maybe talk about is these salt flat vehicles, because these are definitely more 3D and more developed than the other ones. And this one stood out to me in particular. I really liked this electric vehicle bike that you did. So maybe you could just talk a little bit about how this thing works, because I saw that you come with this very interesting system for the wheel, and then there's these canisters. So maybe we could just talk a little bit about what your inspiration was behind this.
Before this one, I came up with like this salt flat desert truck, and it's those hollow wheels were like one thing I really like, because they have such a cool silhouette, and they just spice up the overall design and stuff. and I came up with this truck, and then I wanted to come up with a motorcycle, and I tried to think of a way of the suspension, so how everything would work, like with steering and the suspension system, and where the motors would be and stuff. Yeah. So, but these are like very early experiments with making a high poly 3D vehicle. So all those texture works and everything, and so I wouldn't do it this way right now. Like this goes like also for most of the other things that I've shown, also for the like 2D stuff. That I think like some of the shading is just really not up to date. But like some of the stuff is I think like also the back section like with the double wheel looks kind of powerful, and it has this hole in the middle, so it gives it a more interesting silhouette, I think, at least. And the idea behind those tanks was like some of them are used for fuel, but others are just storage compartments. And I wanted to have this very rounded shaped language that is like very diesel punk-ish. I wanted to have this for all the hull parts and and the other mechanical stuff that's sitting underneath, like everything that's in this like gunmetal black sort of color. It's a little bit has some harder edges and stuff, and more detail going on. Yeah. And this was also influenced by some Japanese kit bash stuff. Definitely.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's cool to hear you get influenced by something that's not what you expect at all. I think the other thing as well is when I was looking at this, I was trying to like, okay, imagine somebody sitting on it. It's actually got a really interesting sitting position. I was actually trying to imagine seeing it. So you've got the front pegs. These are the pegs to put your feet right here.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're sitting like a forward position.
Yeah. So this would be a very aggressive stance for riding long distances. I think it's closer to a race bike sitting position than a chopper or like a Harley Davidson or something like that. So you would definitely like lean over the fuel tank
a little bit,
very aggressively. But
it'd be really cool to see this thing actually, like maybe a little animation sequence of a guy, maybe he's got his gear tied up to these cargo racks at the back and he's making his way across the desert. I'd love to see it move. Yeah, it was really nice. Yeah, and I can see by the description it says use a little bit of substance paint. I can imagine you going in there and just adding the dirt and the grime and things to each of the parts. Yeah, it's quite really nice. I know you said the rendering wasn't up to date, but I think the final effect on the metal and everything else feels very believable. Yeah, it's a really strong design as well. Overall, you've got the really interesting silhouette and negative shapes, and the functionality feels very believable. So yeah, really strong design. And again, going back to the idea of just having a strong brief to start with. So you've got the electric bike. It needs to be going through the desert. Then you've got that interesting form language going on, and I think just overall it really works as a design. So I think it's very successful. And actually, I think before we move on, maybe we can just carry on talking about a few of those other salt flat vehicles. There's a couple of others in here as well, which started out with a much sketchier stage, and so got some other ones going on here as well. So.
I think those ones were like interesting workflow-wise for me, because I kit bashed like the 3D model, and I did not do that much in 2D, and I just did an over painting in 2D, but very rough, and this was like something like a very fast process, like. It has a different kind of shading to it and everything, but it was definitely a very fast way of creating it.
Yeah. I can tell by these some of these ones, the form language and just the overall shapes and stuff. You really pushed it. So these like huge, oversized intakes, and yeah, I can really see like a lot of different stuff going on with the form language. I thought this was quite funny. It's always like a flatfish or something.
Yeah.
Or a stingray or something. So yeah, super fun. It's cool when you can explore these kind of things on your own time, because you can just really go crazy with it.
Yes.
And I also can see some of that same design principle of having, a focal point with the majority of the detail and a large area of rest, and following that principle throughout the design. It makes it nice and balanced. So
but I did this like subconsciously. I'm doing that, but it's just trying to like my vehicles are like very animal-like, and it seems like they have like faces or at least eyes or something that reminds you of an animal. But yeah, I've also noticed that people during my freelance work, that's not always needed in a design. Like that's something very specific, and like in 99% of the cases, you don't want to have an animal face or something or a helmet in your vehicle. But
yeah, that's true. I think it's actually maybe human nature to paint these things. Maybe it's something we all have in our brains already stored, because we've seen that many faces in animal forms. I think when it comes to designing, these forms come out naturally. And I know car designers, they try quite hard not to make the front of the vehicles look like a face or an eyes. They try to break those forms, because if you just stick two round headlights and like a roundish grille, it looks like like a happy smiling face almost. So I know vehicle designers, they try to break into the headlights and add angular forms and all those kind of things to try and break that down a little bit.
Yeah, but, making it look aggressive. Yeah. But I also so at some point I actually did an internship at Mercedes-Benz.
Oh wow!
It was like quite very different from what I would do, but they were also like concerned about design and stuff. But they often mentioned that this is like designing the hood like a wildcat, like a tiger or something, suggesting all the muscles underneath just to make it look more powerful, like aggressive headlights and everything. Having the thing having a wide stance. So this is also something that you could see maybe in a tiger or something, or just a wildcat in general. I'm not too sure about all this stuff. Like this is just something I picked up during time.
Yeah, I've heard similar things as well, and I think it is just a design trend that's been popular now for quite a number of years. Because if you go look at like the classical cars of the 70s and before, like the old Jaguars or whatever, and you look at some of those forms, they're actually not very aggressive. They're quite rounded. So this kind of aggressive angular shape language, it's really been dominating car design for quite a number of years now, but it wasn't always the case. So you never know, in the future we might actually return to something which is actually softer and more rounded. As vehicles supposedly become more advanced and driverless and all this stuff, maybe we'll go the other way around, the other way, and say, okay, well this time for the next decade we're going to go for a more rounded approach rather than angular and aggressive shapes and all this kind of thing. But I don't know, I like it. I think it looks cool. So yeah. So anyway, so to go back to these, so again, I'm assuming this is the same kind of process as you were using before. So just blocking out in 3D, then going over into a 2D process, and this time you've actually got the function of like some kind of a weapon. So I'm assuming this is some kind of like flamethrower or gas propellant or something like that, or liquid propellant.
Yeah, it was like it's supposed to be like an anti-tank gun, but the round shapes at the sides, it's like supposed to be a magazine storing all the ammo, and this armor protecting the ammo, because getting hit in the magazine will instantly detonate it and destroy the whole vehicle. So.
That's it. Yeah, now you think about it, I actually remember seeing ammo drums in this shape. I think I've seen them like helicopters or something like that. So yeah, the ammo is actually coiled, isn't it, in a cylindrical fashion? It's fed into the gun. Yeah. Again,
Yeah,
look
so-
at I can see, just sorry to interrupt, I just saw the chair there. So,
Someone-
gigantic. So just give the idea. So okay, so we've got like a 1.8 meter tall guy. So he's that big. So the wheels must be like the size of a house. The thing's huge. So yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah, it's a really bad job to sit on top of that, for sure. Yeah, I mean, again, it doesn't really make sense because they're not like these big guns are not loading like that. They have like this. They would need to have like this auto loader stuck on the back of it, like a Russian tank would have, or some of the modern German tanks. They also have like auto loaders, but yeah, it's maybe that goes too deep. I mean, the overall design is not too based in reality, so I thought I could just do that.
Yeah, I'm gonna say.
That's just like that.
Well, I was gonna say, well, I think having like maybe like 10% reality and then the rest being absolutely crazy is fine. I think it works. So yeah, and also just noticing as well, you got that similar kind of wheel cell. Is this chassis inspired by anything particular, or does this come from a particular vehicle, or is it just something you invented? Because it feels familiar, like the way it's up, like almost like a Formula One car.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
stolen from. I mean, this is very clunky in comparison to Formula One. They would
Yeah.
have like carbon, very thin carbon
Yeah, the word.
elements. But yeah, I don't know the proper name of it. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
like wishbone suspension, but yeah, I like when designing a vehicle, I try to look up like reference vehicles and their suspension. So yeah, I guess the geometry wouldn't make sense and stuff, and there's also no like suspension cylinder or like yeah, but
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
So always good to go and grab references from real life, obviously, and figure out how that stuff works. Always good. So and so speaking about suspension systems and chassis, this is one which caught my eye the most, because I saw this thing and I saw the feet, and then there's a top view as well showing the how that front foot connects. You've got this really unusual shape as well, connecting that front foot to the body of this helicopter. It's always really unusual. So and again, I'm assuming there's a little bit of that Japanese inspiration in there with the organic shapes mixed with the mechanical, which I know those guys like to do as well. And
yeah, I'm actually not too sure what the main inspiration was. I just remember that I like built this the helicopter rotor blade on top as just as an exercise, and then I wanted to create a vehicle that's like using it, and then I came up with some like 2D sketches and featuring like those claws and everything, and I tried to find an arrangement that is very like aggressive. So like this is something like for my own designs, I tend to make them as aggressive as possible most of the times. I don't know why, but it's just something that I like to do, making it look powerful and like also like capable, maybe.
yeah. I can see where the legs are connected to the actual main body of the helicopter. So excuse me.
Yeah, I haven't actually rigged it, but rigging it helps a lot. Like for this kind of vehicle to actually get it right and get the geometry right. That's probably something I should have done with this one. And mechanical rigging is not that complicated. Also in Blender, it's like very easy compared to like human rigging, which is absolutely insane. And
the human rigging in Blender, actually, to tell you a quick personal story, I actually had massive issues with that. I could not get rigging in Blender to work for some reason, and for whatever reason the bones just wouldn't connect to the body, and then it just wouldn't bend properly, and the eye cake kinematics was like deforming the mesh in all kinds of weird ways, and I was like, oh, sorry then. But like you say, I think it is much. I know what you mean. It is much easier to just go in there, add a pivot, and get this thing moving. In fact, I know you've got like a little spinner on there. You can just check the turntable of this thing out as well. See this thing moving.
Yeah, and also like some reference from dragonflies and some kind of insects. Yeah, it's all built around like a helicopter exercise rotor, just stuck on top of it. And also, like some of the details also stolen from or referenced from American helicopters. But not that much. Yeah.
Definitely. In fact, it reminds me, some of the Russian helicopters, believe it or not, have some of these really interesting organic shapes. There's one I can't remember. I think it's the KA. I mean, I'm probably going to get this wrong. I think it's the KA-52, but it's got like a really kind of rounded nose. And then they've got another one as well, which is a 2-seater helicopter, and it's just like, I mean, it's like this, but it's got 2 gigantic bubbles for the pilots to sit in. And when I was thinking when they're designing that, I was like, there's no way that deflects bullets as good as, like, say, something more angular. But I guess that was the best design. I mean, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But just it reminds me a little bit of that as well. Some of those Russian helicopters with the 2-seater. I can't remember the proper name for them, but those are definitely worth looking if you haven't heard of them or seen them before. Check those out. But yeah, again, really interesting design. I can see that dragonfly form language, especially in the end of the aircraft and the aggressive stance. So it's really interesting. I saw in the description as well that you used Mesh Machine. So is that just another Blender plugin then, just to help with some of the smaller details and things that you encountered on the feet, or how does that work?
Yes, at this point I try to improve my Blender workflow, and I tried out some new plugins, and I found Mesh Machine and HardOps and all this stuff, and I experimented with it, and yeah, it just saves you a lot of time using these. And now, like after ABRISS, I had some time to go back to Blender again and kind of catch up, because there were like 3 different new versions coming out and geometry nodes and everything, and I was like really behind on everything. And I now try to update my workflow again. And what I'm using now is like HardOps and this whole machine suite with this like decal machine and mesh machine and all this stuff, and it just makes everything extremely fast. And also this like material creation add-on, like Fluent Materializer, which speeds up the texturing process tremendously. And like some of these operations would be especially all this Boolean stuff, also like box cutter. It's just really useful, because you would otherwise, like with the default vanilla Blender, I mean, you're probably very familiar with all this stuff.
It can be quite time consuming, can't it, to set up all those little Boolean operations, and then sometimes they don't work quite right. So making sure, so creating little things like that really does speed things up. I'll have to check out that Materializer. I don't think I've actually experimented with that yet. I did experiment with other things like quick texture, but that's not. I don't know if that would be really as useful for materials. Like things like quick texture plugin is I'd use that more for environments, as setting up textures for planes and buildings and things like that, and grounds. But yeah, really interesting stuff. We can check out Materializer as well instead of Substance Painter.
I also learned, like you also have Christoph. So I have to say I'm like very new to all of this stuff. Like I always created like concept art for myself, and like maybe a year ago I joined like this concept art scene. So I'm very new to all of this, and that's like my perspective is just that of beginner or starter. And at Karakter I worked with Christoph. You also have him in your lineup, and he's absolutely like, you wouldn't recognize his Blender setup. Like as Blender, he customized everything, and he's using also a ton of plugins, and he like created Blender the way he wants it, and is everything optimized on his workflow. And that was a good chance for me to learn all of this stuff. And what he's also extremely good at is just raw pace. So that's something he creates something, and you could say, I could do that, like from a skill cap. Like he would just make a production thing, like not his like one of his very pushed artworks, but just in production. But he does that in like 10 minutes or something,
Right.
and you would say like, yeah, give me a few hours or something, and he actually did that in 10 minutes, and it's insane.
No, that's good. Yeah, and really important as well to go in and spend that time just customizing your Blender to make sure that thing's super fast. It's always worth the time to create those scripts. For me, when I was first learning Blender, that person was Vaughn Ling or Heavy Poly, and I picked up his scripts for Blender when I first started learning that, and that took a lot of the frustration and slowness out of learning the program. So I have to give props to Heavy Poly or Vaughn Ling for those scripts when they first came out. Oh, I should have said when I first started learning Blender. Yeah, it just made it learning the program much faster. Okay, so I think that just about wraps up everything in the portfolio. Is there anything else that you want to chat about while I've got you on the on here? Is there any other piece that you'd like to have a quick chat about, or?
No, not like. Yeah, I mean, just what I am currently working on is just like improving my Blender workflow, and yeah, that's basically it. And I'm also like shading everything properly in 2D is like very difficult, and that's also something I'm continuing with. Yeah. And what I would like to do in the future is maybe incorporate like some more humans or reference points in storytelling into the designs. Just not just dropping some random alien spaceship. But yeah, I will see.
Well, saying that, I actually thought this character design was quite interesting. So maybe we could see some more of these guys. That could be cool. But yeah, and I've got one last question for you, because I'm actually coming to Berlin. I know you guys have got an industry event on coming up soon, which I'm going to actually come down and actually listen to. There's actually another one of our presenters who's going to be down there. That's Christoph. I can't pronounce. I don't pronounce his last name. Like Streitcheck or something. Is that how it sounds? Yeah. So Christoph. So Christoph is going to be giving a presentation as well at that event. So I'm going to come down and check him out. So my question is, what is one place everyone should visit in Berlin?
One place everyone should visit in Berlin. Everyone should visit. Yeah, I mean, depending on what you want to experience, like there's of course like Friedrichshain and Kreuzberg, like just very Berlin cliche sort of parts of the city where this is where like all the people would go on Friday, and this is where the clubs are and everything. But there's also there are quite a few good museums, like Pergamon Museum, or one of my favorites is I actually forgot the name, but there's like one museum, das Technische Museum. It's just it has like this an airplane on top of it, and there are just a ton of
the Technology Museum,
and they have a ton of trains and everything. So this is like interesting, like for an artist, maybe for a concept artist. There's like a ton of reference material, so that's quite cool.
I've actually heard in Berlin there's actually quite a few like artists. I don't know how you describe, like artist squats or something, like where artists all live. In the picture I saw was like a gigantic kind of old warehouse or something, and the entire lot was just converted for artists to come out and live and work in. I can't remember what it's called, but yes, there's a ton of places. I'm definitely going to go to that Design and Technology Museum. I think there's also a Bauhaus Museum, so it'd be cool to go see some of the godfathers of design and see some of those earlier works, and, where it all began. So I think that'll be interesting to see as well. Okay, Well, I think before we wrap up, I think it's worth just going over ABRISS as well. So if you guys want to go to ABRISS, you can go see the game that Till and his two other friends, so a team of 3, small team, have been working away on these last few years, and you can go and check it out on abrissgame.com. You can also go to Steam, and you can go and grab a demo of the game, and if you love the game, you can actually buy it as well. And you can also see some more gameplay on there, and you can go watch that, go check it out. It looks so cool. get to build structures up and destroy them. So you can go over to Steam and see that. And if you want to come over and listen to Till give a presentation, so again, Till will be giving a presentation at gfdnorth.uk, that's in Manchester, UK, and he'll be giving a presentation on the Saturday, the 6th of August. You can also scroll down and you can grab a link to Till's work. You can go have a look at his amazing work on his ArtStation page from there. I'll also be posting the podcast onto the podcast section of the website, where you can also check out the interviews with our previous guests as well. We've now got 6 and this will be the 7th. And if you just want to get notified of when tickets will be available to the public, and those should be going on the website soon, and you can go over to that page to get signed up and notified. But that's just about it. So thank you very much, Till, for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really enjoying this.
Yeah.
I'm also looking forward to the presentation and preparing it. And
yeah, I can't wait to hear what you have to say and learn a bit more about your design process on the day. So yeah, it's been great. Okay, guys, right, thank you everyone for listening. My name is Ryan Woodhouse. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.